Okay, welcome to, well, it's not a number, but it's just the Cycling Europe podcast, and, well, I'm not going to give it a number because it's a bit different. If you're actually hearing this, then congratulations, because I've no intention of publicising what I'm recording today. It's a bit of an experiment, so if you are listening, then congratulations, because, well, you might learn something that other people are not going to learn. I'm actually standing next to the River Calder in Hebden Bridge. I've cycled down here, and in my hand I have my iPhone in one hand, and in the other hand I've got a microphone that is stuck into my iPhone. Now, you might think, well, why is he banging on about that? Well, it'll all become apparent in a few moments, but I'm just going to give you a backstory. When I started making this podcast back in, I think it was 2018, it was following on from having met somebody at the Tour de France. A chap who was making a podcast, forgot the name of the podcast, but he was making a podcast, and he wandered around the towns of the Dordogne where we were, recording bits and pieces. He had a microphone in his hand. Can't remember what it was plugged into, but he had some heavy duty equipment, there were headphones on his head, and I got talking to him, and as a result of that I went home and I made the first episode of the Cycling Europe podcast. Now, at the time I was actually using just my iPhone, and I stuck a microphone that I bought into the end. It wasn't a brilliant solution. The quality of the microphone was actually really good, but it wasn't a brilliant solution in the sense that the microphone I stuck in made a bit of a tapping noise, which was a bit annoying. So from that I graduated up to using a handheld digital recorder called a Zoom H4n Pro. Nothing to do with Zoom video meetings. This is Zoom as in audio recording, and the quality of that is phenomenal, and I continue to use that to the day. Today, the last episode of the podcast, for example, with Tim Moore, was recorded using that, and that mixed with a few recordings that I make back at home for the intro and bits and pieces is usually how the podcast now is made. Occasionally, less and less, hopefully, because I'm fed up of using it, I use Zoom, the video conferencing Zoom, to record stuff. And it's all edited together on a piece of software called Hindenburg, which does a fantastic job of piecing everything together. Really easy to use, really easy to edit. Okay, now, why is all this relevant? Well, when I went to Spain a few years ago, and then when I went to the east coast of Yorkshire, and when I went round Britain and the Outer Hebrides last year, for example, I took with me the audio recorder, the Zoom H4n Pro, which is fine. It's not that big, handheld thing, but it's still not easy, in fact, if not potentially impossible, to record something while you're actually travelling and upload it to the internet into a podcast. The H4n Pro records onto a SD card that then needs sticking into a computer. You download the audio file. It's a massive file. It's a WAV file, and for example, the interview with Tim Moore, I think when I downloaded that, it was over an hour long. We're talking well over 1 gigabyte of data, which doesn't make life easy if you're trying to do things remotely. And the podcast that I produced about going to Spain and being elsewhere, Outer Hebrides last year, they were all recorded actually while travelling, but they were edited when I got back home, so they didn't actually appear until several weeks, probably might even been a few months later. So what I'm doing here, I'm trying to experiment with using just my mobile phone, and not the microphone that it comes with, albeit it's a very good quality microphone on the iPhone, but it doesn't have a windshield. And so what I've done, I've stuck in my who makes this? It is, yeah, that's right, Rode. There's a Rode microphone that I've got, which I used to use occasionally on top of a camera, and it's got a windshield. It's only a tiny thing, and via an adapter it sticks into the iPhone, and I can now record things. So I'm standing here trying to record enough audio to see if, while standing in this park in Hebden Bridge, I can actually create a mini podcast, upload it to the internet, and get it distributed on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, etc. Now I've downloaded some converting software because I think there's an issue in that the iPhone records in a proprietary file format that only Apple uses, and from a little bit of research back at home, Spotify, they need to pick up the RSS feed. God, I feel as though I'm speaking a foreign language. Anyway, it's amazing what you learn in 2-3 years of doing a podcast. The RSS feed is picked up from WordPress. The audio needs to be uploaded to WordPress, and then the RSS feed is generated, which is picked up there then by the likes of Apple and Spotify and Amazon and all the others, and they publish the podcast on their particular platform. However, I've read that Spotify does not pick up anything apart from an MP3. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is, once I've finished recording this, is to convert it into an MP3 file, and then I'll upload it to WordPress. I'll format it remotely using the WordPress app, which is kind of nothing new there because I'm used to doing that, and then categorize it as a podcast, and hopefully by the time I get home I should be able to listen to this as a podcast. Right, if you're listening to this, you might find this all fascinating. You might find all this completely unnecessary and boring, which it certainly has nothing to do with cycling, but if it works, it potentially means that when I head off in the future, and here I'm thinking, well, if I do go along one of the coast-to-coast routes, either at Easter or at May half-term, I'll certainly try and do a little bit of mobile podcasting. I can already mobile blog till the cows come home, but mobile podcasting, and then obviously when I hit the continent later this year, hopefully on my cycle, my journey around the Baltic along Eurovelo 10, I will be able to create some podcasts using the setup basically that I've got in my hands now, which is just the iPhone, this microphone, and an adapter. And yeah, the other thing I need to, and I'm not doing this today, but I perhaps need to try, is editing on the iPhone. Now I have got something called Hindenburg Lite, which is a piece of software which is, as it suggests, a simple version of Hindenburg, and you can do some editing on that. I'm sure there's other software available that can be used for editing remotely, so I might have to look into that. But for this one, I'm just not going to edit it, and I'm trying my best not to muck up the recording. So that's it. So it doesn't have a number, this podcast. It will sit there as a extra special bit of the podcast if anybody chooses to ever listen to it. I've now let you into the secret of how I make these podcasts. It's not revolutionary. The challenge is in making something that people want to listen to in the first place, rather than the technical side of things. But anyway, by the time I get home in a couple of hours, I'm going to cycle back down the River Calder and the Rochdale Canal back in the direction of home. Hopefully when I get home I should be able to switch on my computer and listen to this episode of the Cycling Europe podcast, the one without a number. I'm going to have to think of a name for it. How to make a podcast. How to make a podcast remotely. God, that's such a boring title. But anyway, reporting almost live from Hebden Bridge. This is Andrew Sykes, and well, if you never hear this, you'll know that I failed miserably, and I've had to go back to the drawing board. But thank you for listening. I now need to do all the necessary and get the whole thing uploaded.